Plum Island Horror expansion, More of a Bad Thing. So this video is part digital unboxing and part how to play. Um, and in full disclosure, I did a lot of testing on this expansion as well as building the TTS module for it, and that was also true of the base game. So my opinion about this game and this expansion are about as biased as you're ever going to find. So I'm not going to bore you with anything resembling a review. Um, my main goal in this video is to show you what you get with the expansion, at least the digital versions of what you get with the expansion, and more than anything, to provide some rules explanations to assist you in getting up and running with the expansion. If you're new to the base game, also, I do have a how to play video for that, which is linked in the description, and I'll also link it somewhere in this video screen as well. To start with, this expansion can be used in a couple of different ways. You can add it to the base game and play largely using the base game rules, in which case you have a bunch of new content, which we'll describe in a minute. You can also add it and use the new alarming mode rules, which ups the difficulty of the game in a series of stages where by the end it's upping the difficulty pretty significantly. People who felt that the base game was too easy, this is for you at least, because if you still feel like that's not challenging enough, you can also add from a menu of nightmare options to make the game even more difficult still. The other thing that the expansion adds is that if you have limited time, there are 3 day-long scenarios. So each scenario, a scenario from day 1, from day 2, and day 3, which play in about a third of the time of the base game. And then if you want a fresh challenge, there's a full-length scenario that significantly changes strategy and tactics, which will force you out of your comfort zone with the game. So let's start with how you use the expansion with the base game before we look at the alarming and nightmare modes and the scenarios. And we'll start with how you add the various new components into the game. So there are 3 new factions in the game. So you can now choose from among 9 different factions. And new to the game are the Oceanside Construction Company, ZZ's Big Top Circus, and the Monkey Island Cultists. I'll also mention that there is an updated faction mat for the Islanders Athletic Club in which the special ability of the compound has been changed. If you get the expansion, you should use this faction mat and this special ability with the base game as well, not just when you're playing the expansion. The expansion also ships with some new cards for you to add to the game. And some of them have icons in the top left, which we'll talk about in a second. Some of them don't. The ones that don't, like this card here, these replace the cards in the base game. And they replace the cards in the base game even if you're not playing with the expansion components. So you just take the cards in the base game and you can get rid of them and you replace them with these. Cards with an icon in the top left, the icon on the top left indicates in what situation you're going to use them. The ones I'm showing here with a green biohazard icon and the Roman numeral 1, they get used if you're using the expansion, but you are using it with the base game rules. And then there's another icon for when you're playing with alarming mode, and then there's another icon for nightmare options, which we'll talk about later. But so in the expansion, you get a set of new search cards, and the search cards right here on the left with that icon, you will add them to the deck. So you'll add these to the deck when you are playing the base game rules, but you are using the expansion components. And this card over here, you just replace card 27 with this card. In terms of event cards, there's 10 cards, which are listed here, which replace cards in the base game. And they replace them whether you're playing with the expansion content or not. And then you have a series of cards which get added when you are playing with the expansion components, but you are playing using the base game. Finally, there's some search cards and some fate cards which get added, but they only get added if you are playing either with alarming mode or with one of a pair of nightmare mode options. There's a few new civilians and VIP civilians to add to the mix, full of board gaming inside jokes and cultural references, as you'd expect. The expansion even ships with replacement activation tokens or turn order tokens for the original 6 factions for the horrors and for the impending doom, because some of you played this game so much that you're wearing these counters out. Finally, you'll also need to place this new Horrors faction mat, which provides details on the 3 new mutations that you added when you added those new event cards. So let's talk about alpha horrors. And alpha horrors, you need to know how to use them, even if you're playing the expansion with just the base game rules. It's actually the one rule that you need to learn, even if you're just playing with the base game rules. So they enter play if you draw their event card. Like, for example, if you draw this Men in Black card when you pull that impending doom token. And what you do at that point is you are going to then draw a fate card, like this card, and that will tell you what track you're going to spawn on. So this has a 1 on it, so I'm going to spawn on track 1. And what you do is you spawn a normal amount of Murder of Horrors tiles onto that track, and then you add the Alpha Horrors tile on top of that stack. So the Alpha Horrors tile means that you're spawning 1 tile in addition to the normal amount when you draw them. And that's not the only thing that makes them bad. There's a couple of other things about alpha horrors that set them apart from normal tiles. They act as a normal tile in all other respects, but they also provide a unique ability to whatever stack they sit on top of. And all of those special abilities are in the rules, so you can look those up. And then if more than 1 alpha horrors tile is on a stack because of amalgamation, like let's say the feral armadillos were on top of this as well, the stack gets all of the benefits of both of those alpha horrors tiles. And then the last thing you need to know about them is that they are always the last tile eliminated, so they'll stick around until the end. Just as an example of what an alpha horrors tile does to a stack, we can look at the Men in Black here in the rules. This Murder of Horror stack always has a normal movement allowance of 3, regardless of the number of tiles in the stack. And in addition, it's only forced to stop in areas with civilians and no player units. It'll fly over areas with player units. So that's the alpha horrors tiles, and with that, you have everything you need to know in order to play Plum Island Horror, More of a Bad Thing, with a ton of new content and the base game rules. But next, we're going to talk about the biggest new addition, one of the 2 biggest new additions to the game, alarming mode. But what if you're one of those people who found the base game too easy? Well, that's where alarming mode comes in. Alarming mode is a set of new rules that you can apply either individually in groups or as a whole to increase the game's difficulty to suit you or your gaming group's needs. There's also a set of nightmare options which allow you to take that to an even more extreme place, but we'll talk about those in a minute. So let's start by talking through alarming mode's components. And most of the components associated with alarming mode, like these cards, have this symbol on them, a yellow background with a biohazard symbol and a Roman numeral 2. That indicates that they belong to alarming mode. So to start with, you've got 6 new search cards, which you are going to add to the search deck. Next, you're going to flip the game tracks sideboard to its alarming mode side. And let's talk about the differences here. So the first difference is that the biohazard track now has 4 zones. Up until 5, you are spawning 3. Up until 11, you're spawning 4. And then from then on, you're spawning 5. There's also a new mandatory evacuation points track that goes up to 46 for an auto win and down to -9 for an auto loss. So we're going to talk about what that means as we start to talk about the new rules when you are playing alarming mode. And the first of those is one called Death Will Have Its Day. So when you use the Death Will Have Its Day rule, whenever civilians are eliminated, you subtract their EP value from your evacuation points on this track. And you can now count beyond 26. So if you, for example, saved the Walker family, you would increase this by 3. But then if you lost the Lewis family, you would reduce it by 3. So civilians lost now cost you evacuation points, and civilians saved gain you evacuation points. And as you can probably guess by now, if you ever reach -9 on this track through losing civilians, you lose the game immediately. By the same token, if you ever reach 46 on this track, you instantly win the game. Now, very important, this does not include civilians inside compounds, which are still only counted at the end of the game. You still need 26 evacuation points or more at the end to have a chance of winning, but if you're just doing spectacularly, you can record an auto win. First up, it's dangerous to go alone. So there's a new rule added for night turns, and you can see it here. You're only allowed to take one follow action during the follow action phase during a night turn. Now you still decide going around the table whether to take one in the same order, but as soon as one faction takes a follow action, that phase ends. So between you as players, you need to decide which faction it's most important to take that single follow action that you're going to take on night turns. And this scary hand is here as a reminder to you about that, as well as the fact that horrors get +1 movement at night. Next up, I am a beautiful butterfly. So, no more spamming character specials. Each unit can use its special action, and those are actions that are specifically noted as special actions on the faction mat. Each unit can use its special action only once per game round. There's tiles included with this that you can place onto the faction mat that'll tell you when it's been used, and these get removed at the beginning of the end phase during a game round. But if this is on here, no more special actions from that character. Speaking of the end phase, let's talk about Where's the Beef? So remember this lovely step where you got to take all of those exhausted markers off of the game board so that an area that you had searched during that game day, you could search again during the next game day? Can't do that anymore. When you're playing with the Where's the Beef rule, you skip this step during night rounds. Once exhausted, areas stay exhausted for the rest of the game. Next up, we've got the very friendly sounding target-rich environment. Well, now when a track with no horrors on it activates, you spawn a horror stack there instead. No more freebies during the horror's turn. So if this is kind of what the board looked like, and assume there's nothing below this on the board, I'm activating tracks 1 and 2. So I would activate this track and move this horrors unit down to Venner Bread, where it's going to munch that civilian, costing me 1 evacuation point. And then, because track 2 activated but doesn't have any horrors on it, I'm going to spawn horrors onto track 2. Finally, remember how some of you weren't afraid of huge, slow-moving horror stacks because they just moved too slowly to be a threat, and you went to BGG and you posted about that? Well, thanks to y'all, we now have, oh no, there goes Tokyo. So with this alarming mode rule, whenever a Murder of Horrors tile or tiles are added to a stack, and the resulting stack has 8 or more tiles, that huge stack will now activate. It activates immediately if it's not in the middle of its own activation, or it will activate as soon as its current activation is done if it is in the middle of an activation. And the word whenever in that first sentence means what it says. So it would activate if it's in a spawn zone and you spawn a new horrors there. Search or event card adds a horrors to it while it's on a track. It amalgamates because of horrors possession. And each time something gets added to it for a reason, that's a new activation. So if you can't see it yet, believe me, Oh No, There Goes Tokyo has a way of snowballing. And we're going to look at an example of what that is right now. So we start with a stack here that has 7 Murder of Horrors tiles into it. And we draw this event card, which causes us to spawn a Murder of Horror stack directly into that area. So we spawn horrors into that area, and oh no, there goes Tokyo. That stack gets an activation. So that will cause it to move one space to here, where it amalgamates. Oh no, there goes Tokyo. It gets another activation, only it's worse because during that same activation, it's also going to gobble up this civilian, which causes a Murder of Horrors possession, which adds yet another tile to that stack. So now I have two oh no, there goes Tokyo activations stored up. So with the first one, it's going to move into this space, and it is going to fight Donnie and Marie here in this space. And then when it's done with that combat, it's going to use that stored up activation to have a second combat with Donnie and Marie. And depending on how that combat goes, you could see another Horror's possession because it eliminates Donnie and Marie, which adds another tile, activating it yet again. Oh yeah, it can get bad. Now, fortunately, there's a fantastic flow chart in the rules that'll help guide you through the process while you're trying to get the hang of how multiple activations work. So I would recommend using that unless the oh no, there goes Tokyo activation is incredibly straightforward. And I mentioned at the start that the alarming mode actions can be used in part or in whole. Well, GMT included a really handy staging guide where you can kind of step through them in a way that makes sense. So in stage 1, for example, you would add target rich environment and I'm a beautiful butterfly. And if that's still not difficult enough for you, you can add it's dangerous to go alone and where's the beef to it. And then in stage 3, if you're still not finding the game difficult enough, you can use everything except oh no, there goes Tokyo. And then in the final stage, if you're still looking for a challenge, you can add oh no, there goes Tokyo and play the entirety of the alarming mode that's included with more of a bad thing. But of course, if that wasn't enough, the designer and developer know that some of you out there are masochists. And so there's even a set of a la carte nightmare options that you can add to make things even more difficult if you're, for some reason, still feeling like the game is too easy. I'm not going to go through all of the nightmare options. They're well documented in the rules, but let's talk about a few of them. The first one that I want to talk about is you can either add, there's one rule to add these tough fate cards to the deck. This is a set of 6 cards which add significantly worse activation and spawn instructions for you. And then there's even, if that isn't enough, a set of horrifying fate cards which make that even worse. So one of the things you can do is you can add one or both of these to the fate deck to make the fate deck even more punishing. There's meals before bullets. So previously, during the hunger phase, you could choose between feeding your units or assigning them a damage. Well, that takes that choice out of your hands. You have to feed your units during the hunger phase if you're able, and only if you don't have enough supplies can you choose which units you don't want to feed and assign them a damage. But you can no longer assign damage to save supplies. Then there's go pester someone else. So on game rounds where you get more than one action, after you take that first action, you have to draw a fate card. And if the fate number is equal to or less than the unit's bravery rating, you can proceed. Otherwise, you can't, and that action is wasted. Similarly, but for follow actions, we have hesitation kills. So if you're using this nightmare option, when you're attempting a follow action, you conduct the check for an event before you go through with the action. If you draw a card which says that you need to draw an event card, you draw the event card and you don't get to conduct the follow action, and no more factions may attempt follow actions that turn. Then there's the things that go bump. So now, whenever you draw a red fate token, first you draw an event card, then you do the spawn and activation. So a lot more impending doom events are going to come out. And then finally, there's to the death. So after all horrors in area are done conducting close combat attacks, if there are still horrors and non-horrors units in the area, you just keep performing close combat until only horrors or only non-horrors units remain in the area. And here you have to remember to add a biohazard cube to the bag after every single close combat. So that's an overview of the nightmare options. There's many more. You can go to the rule book and check them out. But they're great little nuggets that you can add into the game to change the difficulty level until you have tuned the Plum Island Horror, more of a bad thing, to be the exact difficulty that you and your gaming group want. And also, as you get better and better and better, you can keep adding options to change your play style, to make it more difficult, to keep the game kind of working for you and keep it new and fresh. Finally, recognizing that the full campaign game is a non-trivial investment of time. The expansion introduces a series of day-long scenarios that you can play if you have a limited amount of time. There's one scenario, Oh, What a Beautiful Morning, Oh, What a Beautiful Day, which take place on day one, and it focuses on this sort of frenzied evacuation effort in the earliest hours of the catastrophe. Scenario two, The Governor's Decree, takes place on the second day of the Plum Island Horror, and it focuses on your attempt to secure a set of areas because the state's governor wants to fly in for a series of photo ops. Scenario three, Goodbye Cruel World, takes place on day three, October 27th, and it really compacts the playing area. The spawn zones move down the track, and in this scenario, you gain and lose VPs based on evacuation points, including negative evacuation points, civilians in compounds, the biohazard level, overrun points, and in the end, depending on how many VPs you end up with, you will fall somewhere on the spectrum between hero and scapegoat. The final scenario, It's a Ballroom Blitz, is a full-length scenario, but it provides a counterfactual. I mean, the whole game is fictional, but within the fiction of the game, it provides a counterfactual which alters gameplay significantly. If you feel like you have strategy and tactics from the campaign game mastered, try this scenario. You'll have to play a completely different style. So that, in a nutshell, is Plum Island Horror, more of a bad thing. Hopefully this gives you some fairly neutral commentary on what the expansion includes, and more importantly, hopefully the video helps you make sense of the new rules so you can get up and playing confidently as quickly as possible. I'll finish here just by saying the standard things, which is if you enjoyed the video, it would be great if you could like. Definitely comment if you have questions or anything you want to talk about with regard to Plum Island Horror. And obviously subscribing and hitting the notification bell really helps the channel. But we will see you next time on Agility Snips Gaming Table.